Who's introducing?
I'm
Hi.
introducing.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Tracy. How are you doing?
I'm okay, Lillian. How are you?
I'm doing good. I've been looking forward to this. So, we are talking today to Tracy, whose book comes out on Tuesday. Yes,
February 13th. So Friday in the US, I
I
believe,
love that.
and the 18th in Canada, and another week after that, I think, in the UK. So it's a bit of a
Mhm.
staggered release, but yeah, so Friday. If you pre-order, it goes out pretty much as soon as it gets dropped, which is kind of
And
fun.
so, we'll have some information for folks about how to do that.
Yeah, I'll add links because yeah, I'm suggesting that the US customers shop right from Llewellyn, who was the publisher.
Yeah,
And then for Canadian customers, Indigo or Chapters, just
very
because
cool.
it's local.
Yeah,
And yeah, so I'll put those links in the description when I do the edits for the video.
that's so cool. And the book is called Charting Love, and it's about Venus and the role Venus plays in love. So I have obviously a multitude of questions, different ways to sort of discuss it. The first is to start with where you started. Yeah, let's see that gorgeous cover.
There
Look
she
at
is.
that.
Oh, isn't it pretty?
It's so gorgeous.
Okay.
Unlock the relationship potential in your birth chart. So we were talking before we got online about the things that I was noticing in the process or in the book, and we'll get back to that. But I wanted to kind of start with what you started with, which was the horoscopes for Llewellyn, which is the same publisher that publishes this book, and just a sense of what you noticed in terms of difference or similarity in writing the book versus the horoscopes.
Well, that's a great question because Um, the horoscopes, you have to, it's 40 words that you have to get an entire month's worth of
Wow.
information into. And so the astrology of my chart is very well geared to, I'm concise is, I'm very good at that. The book is the whole like talking more part of writing is much more challenging than the
Mm.
horoscopes are.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yes. So the stretching of, sometimes it feels like after writing the horoscopes, I'm going on and on and on.
Ah, interesting.
So I had to
Interesting.
get over that.
Yeah. Yeah. That wasn't my experience in the book. And I think it's in part because you gave people exercises to do and directions for how to use these things. But that's fascinating. So, yeah, I would imagine when you talk about stretching it, you're talking about putting in the same sort of diligence underneath 20 times the amount of words, which is that much more work. But yeah, congratulations. That's so
Oh,
exciting.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Do you have any notions for additional books?
Yeah, I do.
Nice.
There's one in the works for sure, but
Very
I
cool.
think so this is the other thing that's really tricky about writing a book for a publisher
Mhm.
is that this was written quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And it, like from the submission point through the editing and everything else, it was almost 2 years by the
Wow.
time it's all said and done. I submitted, so you got to think then writing actually started before submission.
That's right.
So it is actually more than 2 years that this has
Yeah.
been in progress. And I actually hadn't looked at it in months, right? Because there's a
Right.
very long turnaround time from the time you're done to the time that they put it out. It wasn't that long, actually. I can't complain. It was shorter than they said. So I had to revisit the material because there's like this really big gap in time.
Yeah.
What was your question?
You're gonna hate me. I got lost in that too because I was like, "Oh my god, yeah, you're figuring out, like, what the pieces are." I started with supporting the information, and you were talking about working with the publisher. It's gone.
It's okay. It's okay.
Gone.
I'll
Yeah.
edit it and I'll see what the question was and be like, "Oh,
And
that's what I was
pauses.
good lord."
So you
Should we
don't
tell them what it's about? Because we haven't even
would
really said what
you
it's about
yeah,
yet.
let's look at the cover
Okay.
too.
So the Charting Love, we saw it in the picture, but I'll show you
Yeah,
the
it's
actual book,
gorgeous.
Charting
Oh,
Love with Astrology. And
beautiful.
so it's basically a step by step. And it's funny because when people are interviewing you, they're like, "Who is it for?" And that's a really common question. And
Sure.
originally, it was very much because it started at the end of the book with the
Yeah.
where using the houses to find places to go or tools to
Sure.
use to find relationship, right? And so that particular audience was more general. You don't need to be an astrologer. Here are all the steps that you need to look this up in your own chart. You will need your
Yeah.
chart, right?
Right.
But you're going all the steps are here for you to do that.
Mhm.
And then and that was just a small ebook. It was born as just this small ebook. And then I submitted it and realized we're going to tell an entire story about relationship. And that's when Venus came in and Mars came in, and the relationship between the rulers of the houses, all those kinds of things to give a bigger story.
Mhm.
And all of that explanation and how to, if you're not an astrologer or you're newer, is all there. There's nothing missing. But I realized it's actually kind of like a full technique. So if you're somebody looking to do this kind of work, it's all there. It's one whole picture that you could use
Yeah.
all of the parts of this and be doing a reading that's just centered around the pieces of this book, in helping somebody, what's your story? Where do you maybe get stuck, in
Mhm.
terms of patterns that you have that you'd like to break? And
Mhm.
then to maybe who's getting in your way, because as we know, the planets can be people or they can be issues. So it fills out that entire story. So there's kind of two markets, right? The fantasy was friends hanging out drinking wine.
Of
Doing
course.
the exercises, maybe going out on field trips together to the places,
Why
for
not?
sure. But I really like it as a resource for astrology,
Yes.
as a tool for sure. It definitely suits both.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking, actually, that the system is pretty robust that you outline for folks, and that even, as an astrologer, there were little places where I was like, "Woo, I'm gonna have to look at that," and that was fun too. Um, but yeah, so I appreciate you talking about who who can access it. I think you've shared elsewhere that you have on your website at consultthesky.com a place where folks can get charts for free.
Yeah, and I'll put
Um,
that in the description too, the link for that for sure.
yeah, yeah, so it's as easy as pairing that with the book and off you go. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, which I'm curious what you think about, it is pretty common for folks to come to astrologers asking about love or money, career, family. And we're such richer characters than that. And so I wonder about when I read through the Venus to Mars, so you are pushing people to understand their desire to be self-reflective and to engage with allies to move it out into the community. That could be for any number of things, right?
Yeah,
That could clear up any number of issues, right?
absolutely. Well, and the technique could be used for, any sort of story you're trying to build, whether it's career, life purpose, you're just looking at different parts of the chart, but the
Right.
thinking is there for anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really
Um,
beautiful.
mhm. The reason why I ended up adding the Venus piece, and that led to Mars and led to the rest of it, but I kept on every now and then I would meet people who had charts that were I don't know how to say, I don't wanna make it sound negative because it's not, but they were charts where I was anticipating the client was going to be maybe more direct, maybe more like a Martian, like
Yeah.
maybe a bit more androgynous, less Venus-y is kind of the easiest way
Yeah.
to put it. But they would have Venus in a really significant place in their chart.
Yeah.
So an example is a client who had Sun, Mars, Venus all in Aries.
Hmm.
Okay, female,
Yeah.
and was anticipating someone who was not had a lot of patience,
Mhm.
maybe a little bit feisty,
Yeah. Yeah.
and And that was there, but the charm of Venus was the first thing you saw, and it was the thing that she leaned on, right? The charm and the sweetness and the, winning people over, right?
Right,
And to me, when from, like, just the technical side of astrology, that's not the way I would have assumed it would have gone because Mars is in rulership in
right.
Aries.
Yeah,
It's the strongest one of the 3. The sun is exalted, so that
yeah,
really strong fiery energy, I assumed, would have been much more bold and in my face, but Venus was winning 100%. And it just kind of blew my mind. It was the first time that I was like, "Holy shit." Like, I really wasn't anticipating that before I met her, and was pleasantly surprised, but also sort of like, I have to rethink Venus. This is totally shifting how I see her and how strong, like, she's been so downplayed in astrology in terms of her strength and how important she is in our natal charts. You know, we always lean on the big 3, or Mercury gets way more stroke than Venus does, but why, like, why, other than the masculine piece of the story, right?
right. And the if you're looking beyond that, that sense of again being moved by what you desire. Oh my gosh, my thoughts are just leaping out of my head. It's making me nuts.
I don't know what we were thinking. Mercury at like 20, the very last minutes before it changes signs, I'm fried. That's okay. We can edit this part out.
Yeah, totally, totally, totally. There's something about that. Oh gosh. Yeah, it's totally gone. It's totally gone.
Okay. But
And
yeah,
then
the power of Venus and well, what I said was the
yeah,
power of Venus and Mercury even gets more credit than Venus. That's what I said.
exactly. And so there were two forks, and then I just shut up because there were too many. One was the warrior Venus and sort of unpacking that, like
Mhm.
that the visions of mythical women or archetypal women rarely disinclude violence or
Mhm.
nefarious stuff. And so they're not fluffy, they're not fun, and they don't get killed in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And then in another, staying in that direction, the Libra connection puts the Zodiac Mafia there, which I just like is like a little bit of a reminder, right?
It's so
Like,
true.
yeah, don't underestimate it. And then on the other side, that notion of how you're talking about this Venus energy, and it shows up whether you're doing it right or exploring things from a pattern that doesn't work for you anymore. Indulging, addicted, lost, depressed. It's big. And so it behooves you to find out, like, gently, I would say, very gently, and without. There was something I read in this book that my husband brought home from the library that said that it is morally neutral. Cleaning and self care are morally neutral. And I thought that was brilliant because we're trying to find all this ADHD stuff. But finding out what you want is morally neutral.
Mm.
It just is. And then
Yep.
when you hand it over to Mars, Mars works for the community. And so it's going to become something that goes out into the world. And that's just how things function. And so there's no problem figuring out what you personally want. You want a purple house and you don't live with an HOA, knock your socks off. Get you a purple house. so so those two things, and maybe we can go into the warrior Venus a little bit, because we were talking also about Mars as Mars can be a bully, a jerk, insensitive, overpowering. With a warrior Venus, oh my God.
So let's explain what warrior Venus means.
Yeah, thank you.
So, because both Mercury and Venus never get very far away from the sun.
Right.
So, in both cases, they behave differently depending on whether they are rising ahead of the sun or behind the sun. And
Right.
with Venus, the warrior that Lillian's referring to is when Venus is rising ahead of the sun. And
Mhm.
there's this bold warrior energy about
Yeah.
Venus there. So, again, we're talking phases. And so it's interesting because no matter what sign we're talking about,
Right.
if it's warrior Venus, there's going to be a fight in that Venus. There's
Yeah.
going to be a boldness and a really wanting to go after for what you want in that
Right.
more warrior kind of way. Fight
Yeah.
for what you want, let's say.
Yeah, stand up for yourself.
Yeah, and when it's behind, and I like the way Aaron Sullivan explains it
Nice.
when she's talking about, and actually the best book is the Venus Star book, and for the life of me, I can't think of who wrote that right now, but that's where I actually got a lot of that information from the warrior versus the now I can't remember what it's called, but when it's behind the sun, it's more gentle, it's more idealistic, and the explanation is it's farther away and
Yeah.
it's higher up, and so it's more reaching to the heavens,
Yeah.
right? Whereas ahead, it's closer to us, it's more grounded,
Yeah.
right? So those are some of the ideas around it, and it will affect, no matter what sign, how
Mhm.
that comes out. So
Yeah.
when I see a Venus in Pisces, yeah, which is the most idealistic of all the Venus
Mhm.
placements, which we're coming into this week.
Right.
um, I'm happy to see that Venus is ahead of the sun,
Right.
because it's it's going to be easier to get what they want, because
Right.
it's earthbound, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the really idealistic Venus, when it's rising after the sun, like you can't really satisfy that energy because it's not
No.
of the planet Earth,
Right.
right? And so it's important to know that about what Venus is doing, because it can shift how you react to what you're bringing into your life. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, I have a couple of those Venus and Pisces idealistic people in my life,
Mhm.
and it's challenging to see, like, because there's this difficulty and satisfaction when that
Right.
Venus is just that idealistic, you know?
Right, right, and I often think about concrete language in those instances so that you're moving away from abstract concepts, which only contribute to dissatisfaction because 'cause you're just following a verbal gerbil or whatever that would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I also enjoyed, if you can remember some of your remarks around David Bowie, I enjoyed seeing his chart.
Oh, David Bowie. You know what? Let's not talk about
Okay,
David Bowie, because
no problem.
that's not coming to the top of my head at all.
Yeah,
I did use his chart for consistency throughout,
sure. Yeah.
but I also, like, we cut probably 4 examples out of the chart
Oh my
for, like,
gosh.
very robust
Yeah.
walkthroughs using all the different, like, all the pieces of the technique.
Wow.
Um, and you know what? The one that has been stuck in my head the most
Hmm.
is the lead guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I can't think of his name right now at
Andy
all.
Samberg.
Yes, and
Yeah.
his story with the partner that he was with at
Yes.
the time that I was writing. Are they still together? I haven't even checked.
I don't know. I
But
don't know.
it's so,
I
like,
think so.
I don't even I'm not even really a fan. I don't even
Sure.
like most things. When I get a good example, it's such an intuitive thing where they come out of
Yeah.
nowhere, and he was one of them.
Yeah.
And so I went and I traced the story, and the neatest thing about that story was, so, we talk about the ruler of the relationship house, and where it is where you're gonna
Yes.
go find that kind of relationship. And so he has his ruler of his 7th, I don't remember which planet, but right conjunct the 10th, in, like,
Nice.
conjunct the midheaven in the 10th house. And one of the things about a midheaven is it's your most visible place of your chart, right?
Yeah.
So he met his partner, who's a singer. She
Yes.
dragged him on stage the first
Yes.
time they met,
Yeah.
and he was there working. So
Yeah.
it was a career thing that he was there for.
Wow.
They met in public on a stage in front of
Wow.
thousands of people. Like, it was such a literal story,
Oh, I love that.
about, but we cut it because it was too timely. It would, not necessarily
Oh, I
have
get
long.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't
But,
know.
it was just such an interesting thing. Bowie, now let me go look. Tell the story, Lillian. I'm gonna go look at the Bowie stuff because now I wanna remember.
Uh, uh, of what we had in the chart?
Mhm.
Ay, ay, ay. I
Tell any
also have to
story.
get the book. One moment, please.
I just remember the things from Bowie's chart, like, there was lots of he had a very complicated relationship story. which
Mhm.
explained why, he found that partner later.
Yes.
There was some when
Iman,
it's
yeah,
not a straight line, right? From the 5th to the 7th to the 8th, all the planets are having a nice conversation. It's, an easy
yeah.
flow. Often there's some learning to do first. There are relationships to be had so that um
Mhm.
you've done the learning and you can recognize that person that's meant to be for a long time. Because I think that can happen if
Right.
you hear these stories when like, "Oh, I met him, like, a long time ago, but it just didn't
Yeah,
click, and then we
that's right.
re-met," and so there's some learning there, and that was very evident in his story
Yeah,
throughout because it wasn't a really straightforward relationship story.
right. Exactly,
That's what I
exactly.
remember about his chart, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. All right.
Now can
Let
I
me
tell a story? Can
I
I,
wish I wish you would.
you
I'd
wish
love to
you wish
hear
I
it.
would?
Yeah, I got, I only because I wanted to look up the Bowie thing because there was something tickling me about the Mercury, and if I can
Mm.
remember it, I wanna bring it up.
Right, right. He has
But
such I
yeah,
mean, whenever I the problem with trying to remember something Bowie-esque
yeah,
astrologically is he has such a Capricorn Uranian chart
right.
that and I've used him for other things, so I always
Mhm.
go to that sort of
Yeah.
oddball Uranus
Exactly,
energy, you know?
exactly,
And so
exactly.
looking at it from a relationship point of view was so strange because it's not what I usually would look at his chart for,
There
you
you
know?
go. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're plugging into it. So yeah, I mean, I think about, I used to watch 30 Rock and Tracy, Morgan
Awesome.
played someone on the show, and he used to say, "Freaky deakies need love too. Freaky deakies need love too." And that I thought that was really interesting, right? Because we are inundated from the time we're born with what we're told is what we want. And it becomes more and more abstract and hypothetical. And then the outcome isn't even satisfying unless you're lucky enough to be born into a community that provides that kind of nourishment and feedback. And so there's a period where we start shedding that, right? And we're having to grapple with the difference between what it is that we want and what our community wants. And if there's still an alignment or a way to work with those folks, and so, yeah, it's a fascinating study, and then just plugging it in through the relationship houses, I just get that tickly feeling of, whew, that's intimate, and part of intimacy is conflict and coming through conflict, because if it all ends with one cross word, you're on your own,
Right.
we're
Yeah.
just not built like that. So yeah, it was fascinating. And I know for my chart, Venus has a really strong role to play, but I kind of wanted to see if we could talk about what Venus is doing this year. I can't remember if it's slipped into Pisces yet or if
On
it's
Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday.
Tuesday. Yeah.
Yeah, Tuesday. Soon.
And and this is what we discussed in the prior weeks, where everybody kind of did a nod to Uranus and is moving through, right? Getting ready to slip into Pisces.
Yeah.
Um, and I felt, I don't know if you felt it, but like a lightening. I think with the last parts of Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, it was really frustrating. It felt like I was on, 1 inch of sludge or something like that. And I couldn't wash it off. There was just too much water still around. And as Neptune has made its way into Aries, I do feel like it's lighter. And then with the personal planets moving into Pisces, it feels even lighter, even though we're not quite in all of that air fire yet.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, well, I mean, Saturn moves into Aries on Friday, so
it's
it's
awesome.
it's we have a big switch happening this week for sure, for sure. And so I mean, Venus has an interesting story this year because this weekend actually she does on Sunday she squares Uranus,
Right.
and then this is something that Stormy and I talked about with Venus this year because um, with her going Venus going retrograde at the and that
Right.
only happens every second year, right?
Right.
And it tends to be a time when relationships get challenged for sure.
Right.
But with the connections with Uranus on top of that, we're going to there's going to be some relationship shaking up happening
Yeah,
potentially for people this year for sure. Um, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Venus actually spends the longest amount of time retrograde, but does it the
right,
least often.
right.
Yeah. And so it's serious business when Venus goes retrograde, because it is rare. Everybody else every year, right? Jupiter's retrograde every year.
Yep,
All the outers every year,
yep,
Mercury 3 times a year.
yep,
But so it's a special time when Venus goes within and re-examines our values and what we want and all of those things. And so it makes sense that people would, rethink where they are in a relationship because that's what Venus retrograde really is for. Do you still want what you really want? You
Well,
know?
and the magnetizing of Venus means you're not gonna do it on your own, and so that's where you hear the stories of old loves popping up, even if they pop up in a story. I remember finding out that somebody I dated passed away in 1991,
Wow.
and I found out in 2003 maybe, and I thought, "What is that?" You know? What is that? And I should go check because I probably made a note of it, and it might be during a Venus retrograde, but that's kind of the notion I would go out with is that with a retrograde, you're inviting back in or you have pre-magnetized all of these energies that will
Right.
come and make themselves apparent. So
Yeah.
it's not new. It's not necessarily that you're obligated, but you will have to say, like, is this what I still want? Or is this something that's not for me anymore?
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. I had a great story. I had seen, a client who joined my mailing list and
Mhm.
and so, got all the updates, and
Yeah.
it was I think it was the last Venus retrograde or the one before, and I got an email after that newsletter went out, and she says, "You're not gonna believe this, but I came across totally accidentally, we lost Lillian, so I'm gonna start that over again when she comes back in. She'll be back. It's her internet. Hopefully, she'll come back. Otherwise, it's me talking to myself and our one person who's here today. Who's here today? We'll be back after these messages. Wish I whistled. I don't whistle. Let me do a dramatic reading from the book Venus in Fire Signs. Maybe I'll go find that David Bowie stuff while she's not here. There we go. She's back.
Ooh, hey. Oh, no.
You made it. I can't see you, but you're back.
I know. It says that I haven't given permission for the camera. So let me see if I can fix that. Do, 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 do.
I was going to whistle, but I don't whistle. I
I
thought
know,
about
right?
doing a dramatic reading of the book, but
I
I
know, right? I'm
still
so
can't.
sorry.
I'm not jumping to the David Bowie stuff as quickly as I wanted to.
Oh,
That is one thing that I'm complaining about. Uh,
is
is here we go. There's David Bowie,
mhm,
296. I mean, my Virgo self came out, and I wanted like a really detailed table of contents,
mhm.
and it's just sort of a medium detailed table of contents.
Ah, I see.
Other than that, it's perfect.
So you would have had like subsections for the titles, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So he's got that moon in Leo sitting in his seventh house.
Yeah.
Conjunct Saturn, like that. So there's a lot, and Saturn retrograde. Oh, we lost her again. So there's a lot of learning when you've got Moon conjunct Saturn in the relationship house for sure. Yeah. And then Saturn retrograde has to learn how to age backwards and not take life so seriously.
I am so sorry.
Talk about David Bowie. I was all you missed is that I said, with the Saturn
I
retrograde.
hear you now. Let me
Oh, great.
try. I
So
know,
fun.
I know. Guys, here we go.
Again, I worried about
Let's see.
the last minutes of Mercury and what it was going to do to us. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, hold on.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Here we go.
And to be fair, oh, you can't hear me. I'm going to start talking, but you can't even hear me.
All right. I may have to go out and come back in one more time.
Okay.
I will see you in a moment.
Sounds good. Hi, everybody. We're having technical difficulties. Whoever's here, we're just waiting for Lillian to come back in. Mercury's in the last minutes of Aquarius, and so it is having fun with us. There we go.
I think this is it.
Can you hear now?
I can hear you and everything.
I played music.
Technology is so humbling.
Yep. I don't remember what we were talking about, though.
Well, I was talking a little bit about conflict leading to intimacy, and part
right.
of that being part of the Venus cycle that we're kind of alluding to when we talk about the warrior like Venus.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
you said something about our social environment telling us what our
That's right.
relationships, and I'd kind of like to touch on that because that's a big motivation to even writing the book in the first place. Is that we've been sold a story for so long that relationships are supposed to be in a certain pattern. They're supposed to play out in a certain way. We're supposed to be monogamous. We're supposed to do this. We're supposed to do that. And I've said this before, but a lot of the thinking around the houses part of the book came from meeting someone who had been married for a really long time. And when I looked at her chart, unhappily, unsatisfactorily married for a really long time. And there was no connection between the fifth and the eighth house. So that's where the sexy time and the fun and the play comes in, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
intimacy. There's no connection between that and the seventh house. And
Mhm.
that doesn't mean anybody who has that can't have that kind of a relationship. But
Right.
obviously her husband didn't connect it together, right? Because that's another
Yeah.
thing about synastry. Somebody can come along and fill in those gaps, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden those things are part of your relationship, right?
Yeah.
And I just, very flippantly said, well, you should have had an affair because there was just so much positive energy around the fifth and the eighth.
Mm.
And she said, yeah, I think I probably would have stayed married then, and
Oh,
I
wow.
like, and preconceived notions, not the kind of human I would have assumed that would have sat okay with, you know?
Right,
But we're
right.
not all the same. We're not all built the same, and our charts aren't built the same. And so to try to go out and have the same kind of pattern in a relationship, I mean, you just have to talk to enough people. I remember meeting this amazing couple at a social event, and I asked how they met in the bar, dancing, one night stand, whoops, fertile, got married 20 some years later.
That's right.
We aren't all going to start in the same way, you
Oh,
know?
honey. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Marilyn Monroe is one of my favorite examples to look at for that because everything for her starts in that eighth house.
Wow.
Right? And so you think about her relationship patterns and how there was even in her talking about them, there's such a sexual chemistry to
Right.
every partner she had, right?
Mhm.
And you might see that in somebody's chart who feels like every sexual connection they make needs to turn into a partnership, right? If the
Right.
ruler of the seventh is in the eighth.
Huh.
And that
That's
might be true.
interesting.
That
Yeah,
might actually be true, right?
yeah,
But we're told that that's wrong. And so, you know, part of the book is to learn how to kind of get past your own patterns and kind of take responsibility for the things that you've got going on in relationships and even
yeah.
friendships, siblings. I mean, it's going to tell you a story about all the relationships you have in your life, right?
That's
But
exactly
then
right.
also, like, being okay with the fact that you might not get a Disney story, you might not get a Who's Got Mail story, that just might not be your story. I mean, it's
Right.
the same with when we talk about monogamy. Not everybody is designed for monogamy,
Right.
right? And
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that. Our
That's
charts
right.
are different for a reason, you know? And
Yeah.
so a lot of it, like, my goal is self-acceptance and, you know, like, let's look at this from a totally different way and find your personal story.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I mean, I think about the placement of things in the 7th house as opposed to in the 1st house, as a for instance. So Uranus has been traveling through my 7th house for a couple of years, and my experience of it has been my partner comes up with the most wackadoodle shit, and I get to say yes to that. And he has Uranus on his descendant natally. So when I saw that coming, I said, wow, you are going to enjoy this. Because whether I like it or not, this is the ride that I signed up for.
Yeah.
And so let's hear it. Let's hear what this stuff is. And so it's interesting, right, how that feels. My description is based on knowing that if something's in the 7th house, as a person who is a lot in the 1st house, who my husband calls me a freedom fascist, you know, like it's a mistake to tell me what I should do, you know, like,
Yes.
and that's what a lot of people do. And his experience was absolutely not like that from what I gather, and the 7th house, from what I gather through astrology, is where you are confronted with what other people need. You're confronted with situations that are where you are not the person who is making the choices maybe, or, going forth in a brave way. You have to bravely work with other people. What's that? You know? Really interesting, you know, and whereas if somebody has that in the 7th, they're accustomed to that. But, you know, those are the places where the intersections to me become really interesting. So Venus as a soft and nourishing, sensual place to be. Oh, I can get behind that night and day. Beauty. I thought about that. A friend took me to ballet for the first time, and I was in my 30s. And I looked at it and immediately just went back before there were electric lights, like maybe kerosene lamps or something. And I was like, if a bunch of fluttering gorgeousnesses flew around on a stage illuminated by magical lights, I wouldn't know what to think, you know, and it really concretely put that idea of Venus's beauty being something that's really tangible and nourishing. The same thing happened in Santa Fe at the St. Francis Cathedral, where there was a huge, very shallow pool of water right inside of the nave, I think it's called. And so you're walking around and it's high desert everywhere. And if you're unfamiliar with Santa Fe, it's also really high. And so you might have altitude issues. but the thing you're not seeing everywhere is water. And you walk into this nave, and just this big, quiet, kind of dark area. I assume it's where they baptize folks. Whatever it was so tangibly beautiful the way they presented it. Um, that's when I think about the soft Venus, right? And then the tough Venus, I think about when couples fight each other and you can tell they're just kind of getting each other excited for the rest of the day. They're really going to enjoy that fight later on. Or yeah, grapplers, people who it's not going to bother them at all if there's yelling, with the proper trust and behavior and accountability. But that softer Venus, boy, you yell once, you might be gone. They might not have that Libra sort of portion. It
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
be
The
more kind of
sensitivity for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I think too, like even just looking at Venus through the signs and then also the morning star versus the evening star. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that in itself is telling a story that beauty is something that we all see so completely differently, like,
Exactly.
somebody who's got Venus and Capricorn is not at all going to have the same appreciation for the most part as somebody who's got Venus in say Leo like mine,
Right,
like
right.
they're it's going to diverge at some point where there's quite a different idea of what, and because it's the what do you value, right? So in that beauty, what
Right.
is it that and I think that that's the other problem with how we've spoken about Venus for so long in teaching
Uh-huh.
astrology is that we've discounted how important those parts of ourselves are, like how we value things is how we value ourself,
Right.
and so really the truest story of Venus is our self-worth. And that, so if when you turn it inwards, when you take Venus and you turn it inwards and you do that work on how you value yourself,
Yeah.
what you start bringing into your life looks very different, and
Yeah.
much more reminiscent of what, even if you couldn't have a really solid picture of what you want, it
Yeah.
starts to look more familiar. Like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yes, my life is starting to look like something that feels like it's a reflection of me." You
Exactly,
know?
exactly. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of value to fake it till you make it, right? And that could make you look to other people or kind of bring in energies from other folks. It's really hard to accept value from yourself. I think in this outward facing sort of world, you're meant to, or it's the expectation that you're like, oh, you look great today and I'm telling you that, so check that off. And oh, we had a great conversation, check that off. And then when you walk away, do you still get to feel good and enjoy yourself and check that off? I mean, that's what we're trying to get to, right? Is that there's, like they say, build a life you don't have to escape from. Let that life happen in here and let it be satisfying in and of itself, right? Like
Mhm.
mapping to the desire. And then when I think about the conflict, I think about how desire is not manifest destiny. And that's another thing we tell people is that if you want it, you should have it. And some desires are there to just kind of break your heart a little bit or teach you about things that you're not going to get involved in by your evolution away from it, where you find you're not a part of any of the thing that you thought you were going to be a part of for a really long time. And that is something that I feel like is about this year and maybe next year too. The shocking information, the too much information, it feels like that disruption of the Uranus is going to carry on, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I know we're gonna talk about the eclipse coming up soon.
Next week, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
next week full eclipse, yeah.
yeah,
Well, and it's at first, like, when everything started to kick off politically and, everything in the world that's happening, I felt bad. I'm like, "This feels trite. The topic of
yeah,
this book feels really trite, and I don't wanna talk about it." Like, people are suffering, it's awful. But the more I think about it, and I love how you just put it, like as the world shifts around us, actually going in and figuring out what you want in a new world landscape, I think it's actually more timely than I was giving myself credit for,
Yeah.
or giving the book or the work credit for.
Right.
Um, and I think it's important. I think, revisiting, and that's what the Venus retrograde at the end of the year is going to be about,
Yeah.
reorienting who you are in this world and what you want your world to look like. What do you want?
Yeah.
And what are your values now? Because it's different, right?
Yeah.
We've faced a lot of things that show
Yeah.
us that the world is different than we thought it was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people are different than we might have thought they were. And
Yeah.
this gives
Yeah.
people a chance to kind of, okay, so who in this new world, who am I? What do I
Yeah.
want? Right?
Even still. And yeah, and I agree with you. I don't think it's trite because I firmly believe we are, you know, I love Carolyn Casey. She says, imagination lays the tracks for reality. And I believe as we vision into futures, like you've been really careful about describing where you can get stuck. I remember there's one thing my brother told me once, or someone told me once. Let's say it's not my brother because I would make that up easily. That I have a really big nose. He would call me, and he had another one where he'd say, "Cheers, big ears." And so I thought I had big ears and a big nose for a long time because I don't know what that means. I was 4, 5, 6, 7. I was very young, but that kind of thing where it's subject to misinterpretation when it comes from someone else. And you can even just check it out inside of yourself. Later he said that he did those things because he thought he had big ears and he thought he had a big nose. So it's just crazy when we get information from other people. But you have to put something in it, that value of, yeah, it's a word that I really picked up last year, satisfaction. Like when I eat these days, I try to see if I'm satisfied and then I stop, or am I satisfied and then I can move on, kind of thing. And
Right.
I don't-
Right.
it took an oddly long period of time to
Yeah.
understand what that felt like.
That was a really huge process. So I'm going to divulge some personal information
Mhm.
here. I had gastric sleeve surgery where they reduce your stomach size drastically.
Mhm.
And so now all of a sudden I could only eat for the longest time about 2.5 to 3 ounces of food, which is really not a lot.
No.
And all of a sudden, I did not realize how indiscriminate I was about what I ate. It was all very Venus, not happy. It was I've got very strong Jupiter energy. So it was
Yeah.
gluttonous and it was
Yeah.
immediate and it
Yeah.
was a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and, realizing that I was just sort of filling whatever hole that was filling. And once I couldn't do that anymore, I had to, first of all, I had to get picky because
Yeah.
it's like, I can only have this much food. It better be the very best of the very best of foods, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think just that process was a really big Venus process for me in a
Yeah.
way I hadn't considered, right?
That's
Because
cool.
when you've had a weight thing your whole life, it's very Venus exterior, how are you being perceived? How do people think you look, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when it becomes like that drastic
Yeah.
and that life changing,
Yeah.
it takes on a very different meaning, and that really shifted how I saw Venus for sure. And it helps that I have a partner who's very Venusian,
Oh, yeah.
and yeah, and so I kind of saw it differently because I could see what the difference between the two of us and his Venusian, for things that are so lovely. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that was a big learning curve for sure. And I think that that can be a really powerful Venus exercise, is to
Right.
actually do the Saturn thing and
Yeah.
restrict and
Sure.
slowly bring in the things to truly understand what feeds that part of yourself.
I
I
love that.
I think that can be really powerful, and it can be the same with even what you surround yourself with.
Mhm.
Slowly, take it down to nothing and start
Yeah.
adding the things that really rev up your
Ah,
Venus.
now you're getting into the whole descent, and the energy of this time feels like a descent, that's not really going to pop us up for a bit. And
Yeah.
I love that notion of that. But what was I thinking about? I was thinking trying to get to the image of what you're doing, because I've run into that too, where I can see myself eating. And if I think I can eat, by God, I'm going to try to eat. And if I've been on a really restricted diet, then that is not at all what I can do. And that has really taken me by shock. And then trying to figure out when I'm hungry, that was really interesting too. But I say that because we are told what will satisfy us. I had a weird run in when I was a kid with Harlequin romances. My mom loved them and she loved romance books. And I read them. And again, if somebody could tell me I have a big nose and voila, it's right there for me. I don't ever need to hear about how men show their love by being mean and disrespectful and challenging. And, each and every one of those books started with this woman who was sincere or confused or whatever it was, and some guy who was nagging her until she said, voila, we're married, I'm rich, or whatever it was. Um, and I think I was like 14 when I was like, I can't read that stuff. It's too damaging for my psyche. And so I didn't. I think everyone else can. And I totally support romance. I know a lot of authors of romance novels, but it's just something that for me, it's a different thing. But trying to get back to that, it's not we create a million different monuments to ourselves that we don't know are running around sucking up all of our energy. We can clarify what that is and actually get what we want that is nourishing, that can help us speak to who we are. And that is the recipe for being available to love, right? Because in the end, I'm trying to think if it was Diana Stone. She was like, oh my God, you can find love anywhere. What are you talking about? I mean, you probably could find love like right now if you're looking for it,
Well,
So what?
and that's the trickiest part, right? It's like, and talking about, so part of the book is, what's in charge of this house, and
Mhm.
so where's the ruler of that? Go to that house, and here are some places to go and things to do that are related to that house where you're more likely to meet somebody, kind of
Yeah,
thing, right?
yeah,
And the whole idea that you're only going to do that if you're going to meet the one. But
yeah,
it's like, but but you, first of all, you're going to get connection, you're going to get maybe friendship, you're going to learn
yeah.
something. So this whole idea that we're on the hunt for just the one person, I think that creates so many challenges. How much pressure, first of all, are you putting on that other person?
Right, right.
Right? That they, and both ways, like, so we have to live up to that. Like, I don't know. I think I that was my other hope with the book, is that, try different places, meet people, have different types of relationships.
Yeah, so for mine, the ruler of my Venus is in the seventh or in the ninth. Nothing is in the seventh, apart from something little. And my husband and I just would walk without any agenda for hours and hours and hours when we first met, days and days and days and days, just like talking about the most spacey way out there things. And it was so much fun. And I couldn't figure out why it was so much fun. And we both have the moon in the ninth house. And so we just felt safe, wherever there are strangers, wherever we can travel that's new and unusual, whatever ideas we can express that are new and unusual. And so I first think of traveling to another country, which we've done and we've really enjoyed. But just that notion of like introducing ourselves to different communities or being in different environments, like that is really exciting, you know?
Yeah.
Is that one of the for instances?
I love that, because I think that speaks to the whole idea that we're living out these parts of our chart in different
Right.
ways, and there are going to be stories that connect to our relationship story that are directly related to these houses, right?
Mhm.
And it's, what's so fascinating to me is that, and I just want what you just said, I think
Yeah.
about the two of you and your engagement in other cultures, your engagement with different foods, and like you both have this passion for experiencing all of that, and that speaks so
Yeah.
much to that ninth house energy. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, when I think about, so I have Venus in the fifth house of romance and fun and
Ooh,
creativity and all those things, and it's in charge of the ruler of my seventh house of relationship. So there's
nice.
this really tight connection there. But now that's fine. You can hope for that. But the dark side of that is I always, every time I had a romance, it was going to lead to marriage, right?
Right.
So there can
Right.
be that challenge. That can be part of the thing that you're learning through.
Right.
Is that not? And this is why I advocate for try all the different types of connections, because I learned something from each one of those things. And sometimes it was just what I didn't want.
Yeah. Yeah.
But most of it really came down to learning about myself, right? And who I would become,
Absolutely.
and, you know, um,
When you say the one person, can't the one person be us? And then you're
right,
prepared?
right, right, right.
Yeah.
And I've said this to many, many people. I did not meet the one, or the one that's still around at this point. Um,
Because
so
we
is
don't
he,
know.
you
Even
never
good
know.
relationships end. We don't
That's
know.
right. That's right. But I don't foresee that, but
Yeah,
who,
same,
right.
same. No.
But I don't remember what I was going to say. We went off on our
Oh,
tangent and I totally lost it.
we were talking about things that lead directly to marriage, and
Yeah.
you were saying this one has led to marriage,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there we
And it's
are.
fine. Yeah, that's the end of it. This one.
It was also
Oh, I was
something
going to
about
say, no, no,
yeah,
here's the thing.
yeah,
It did not come. And I'm going to tell you, it was like months from the moment I was like, I'm done. Like I've got all this Libra energy in my seventh house. I was looking for a partner my whole life. Right.
yep,
And it wasn't until I was like in university and loving it and just loving life. You know, I was an adult student when I went back, and it was just, I was loving every minute of it. And then I didn't care. And
yeah,
also, boop, here's a guy. And for the first time ever, I was just so happy to just get to be me and
yeah.
really enjoy having somebody there all the time, which was just so different from anything else I'd ever gone through. But the key to that was I was happy with who I was and I wasn't looking,
Yeah,
you know? And
yeah,
so it was, and we met. So both of us have Mercury and Uranus strong. Both of us have Mercury ruling our seventh houses and in our seventh houses. Well, we met online on a dating, like, you know, the most,
I
my,
love that.
like,
Yeah,
you know, um, but that's the other part of it, right?
yeah,
You know, you have people, I know several people in my life who are looking for love and it's not the first time around, you know?
right.
And so once you're more mature and looking for partnership, it's how you're going to look is different because you're not as social. You're not at the bar. You know what I mean? You're not doing all those things with your friends like you were when you were younger,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
And so there's this question about, well, should I online date and should I do this? And it's like,
Right.
because people are just sort of doing what they're supposed to based on what other people are doing, right? And so that was the other thing with the way I laid out the houses part of the book is like, no, that's not going to work for everybody. So
No.
here are some things like try this. And one of my favorite anecdotes. So Tara All is somebody who read the book in advance and loved it. And she came back, she goes, oh my God, it was so cool. She said, because she met her partner. He was on a trip of self-connecting with the ruler of his seventh in his first house, which is exactly one of the things that I had said would be, you
Oh, we will be right back.
know,
There
oh,
you are.
I didn't go anywhere. I was literally here the whole time. That was so weird.
What is this day?
I don't know, but I'm kind of done with Mercury.
I
It's
know.
big. So
Well,
let's
yeah.
just wrap up what the book is about. The book is about using your chart to find love. And you look at Venus and you look at Mars, you look at the connections between the planets. I walk you through the whole thing. And then also there's a whole section at the back of the book that talks about the rulers of the houses and where to go out and find people that you'll connect with. I'm
That
not
is awesome.
promising it's forever, and I'm not promising it'll happen right away because timing is everything.
I wanted to chime in that I knew there was something special going on with my now husband when I heard myself saying to him, I hope we enjoy each other no matter what. And just hitting that one note, it was like, ah, let's figure it out.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm
Beautiful.
really excited for the book's release. I think it's going to be a really valuable asset to people's libraries, and we'll put links in, and then editing will happen, so we will disappear less often.
Yes, and we're so sorry about
Yeah,
the dropping off,
right.
but we're gonna blame Mercury because
Yeah,
it's gonna change signs in about 20 minutes, I think.
yeah,
I think it's like last gasping breaths of Aquarius right now,
exactly.
and it's not being very kind. So
No,
thank you so much for asking me about the book, Lillian,
what
and
a
talking to
pleasure.
me about it.
Yeah,
Next week, we will be back talking about
yes,
eclipses
that's right.
because we have one very soon. And maybe as a fun thing, maybe we'll look at the astrology for Valentine's Day, which is the next day.
Oh my gosh, I think that's great. I think I really want to cheer on anyone who exists. They don't have to do a Valentine's Day. I do have a friend who lives in communal spaces and he does validation days
Love it.
instead of, yeah. And then, of course, we know about Galentine's Day from the fictitious show. I think that's so cool. But I think one time somebody asked, if you would consider marrying more than one person. And I used to want to marry everybody because I was so touched by having so many cool people in my life. And the best indication of that was I asked my mom if she would marry me. And she's like, you are
Oh,
so silly. No, I'm not gonna. I'm your mother.
that's so cute.
It was fun. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you for sharing and thank you for writing the book.
Ugh, my pleasure. Thanks for asking me questions about it.
You bet.
We will talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye.